Chapter 21. Lady Mu used to like Suanon, but that was in the past. From Jiang Mei and Su Hua's words, she learned that Suanon had been involved with a man more than 10 years older than her, supposedly for money. The Gu family had come forward to propose marriage in a very low-key manner. Additionally, they didn't hold a wedding ceremony. Instead, they simply handed over the betrothal gift and sent Suanon to Gu Mocheng. To put it nicely, it was a marriage proposal. To say it bluntly, it was selling a daughter. Su Hua assumed that once Gu Mocheng grew tired of Suanon, he would discard her. Before meeting Gu Mocheng again, Su Hua dared not admit to others that he had essentially sold his daughter to him. Suanon was no longer viewed as an innocent girl in Lady Mu's eyes. Her gaze was filled with contempt. "Anan, why are you like this? I heard you found a boyfriend," Lady Mu said. "Yes," Suanon replied without hesitation. Seeing the disgust in Lady Mu's eyes, Suanon guessed that Su Hua and the others must have shared a version of the story that painted her in a bad light. They definitely wouldn't have mentioned that she was standing in for Su Zihan in the Gu family. "In that case, hand over the jade pendant," Lady Mu demanded, her tone now cold and no longer gentle. At the dining table, everyone was staring at Suanon. Their eyes held contempt, ridicule, disgust, and threat. All these unfriendly gazes were fixed on her, but she didn't intend to give up the jade pendant. "If you want to eat anything in the future, you can still come to the Mu family to eat," Lady Mu added, her words carrying a hint of sarcasm. Suanon took a sip of her tea. Why did the tea in this hotel taste so bitter? "If you're with another man, don't ruin Zihan's relationship with him," Lady Mu said. "Anan, please help your sister and Jin Yu," Jiang Mei chimed in, sounding every bit the concerned stepmother to outsiders. "I don't want to hand it over," Suan replied firmly. After she spoke, everyone looked at her in disbelief. "You don't know what's good for you," Mu's father shouted angrily, unable to stay silent any longer. Lady Mu did not try to smooth things over. Suanon, however, refused to back down. "What qualifications do you have to enter our Mu family's gates?" he sneered. They all looked at her as though she was unworthy, but Suanon laughed in response. "Yes," she said mockingly. "What's the big deal? I just had to find 1 or 2 people to play with before the wedding. If he has a woman, I can find a man. Fair is fair. I don't mind if Jin Yu keeps mistresses outside. Once he's had enough fun, he'll be able to focus," Suanon added provocatively, deliberately ignoring the cold expressions on the faces around her. She called Su Zihan a mistress, and Su Zihan couldn't hold back her anger. "Suanon, don't you understand what people are saying? If you don't want to break off the engagement, you'll have to," Su Zihan shouted angrily. After finishing her rant, Su Zihan softened her tone and added, "Anan, please help Zihan and Jin Yu. Look at how upset your sister is." Tears welled up in Su Zihan's eyes as she dramatically threw herself into Mu Jinyu's arms and cried, "Brother Jinyu, she's already betrayed you. Why won't she agree to break off the engagement?" Su Zihan's words darkened Mu Jinyu's expression. What man wouldn't mind if his fiancée had been with another man? Even if he had wronged Suanon first, her defiance stung his pride. Suanon continued to smile, refusing to let them see her falter. Even if she lost, she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her defeated. "Suanon, hand over the jade pendant," Mu Jinyu demanded. "I love Su Zihan," Lady Mu added. "And Anne, by the end of the year, Jin Yu and Zihan will be married. Stop being stubborn and hand over the jade pendant." "We, the Mu family, will never accept someone like you," Mu's father declared firmly. Chapter 22. Suanon held the teacup in one hand, her other hand clenched tightly. She appeared calm as she sipped the tea, but her heart was churning violently. Annul the engagement? When she had seen Su Zihan and Mu Jinyu entangled together, she no longer wanted this worthless man. However, after being manipulated by them for 2 years, she had been forced to follow Gu Mocheng. "All right." This single word was spoken indifferently, causing everyone present to immediately smile with satisfaction. She had agreed to annul the engagement, however. "The jade pendant was given to my mother by old man Mu. If you want to settle this, let him ask me for it personally," Suanon said, her smile fading as she spoke coldly. She turned to Lady Mu and added, "You all know very well why this engagement happened. That jade pendant cost my mother half her life. If you want to annul the engagement, then go ahead. But if old man Mu doesn't want the pendant back, you'll have to ask my mother for it." Years ago, when Mu Jinyu fell into icy water during the winter, Suanon's mother had saved him. Her health had already been poor, and the incident worsened her condition. Old man Mu had been deeply grateful to Mother Su and had grown fond of Suanon. As a gesture of gratitude, he had arranged the engagement. Old man Mu wasn't aware of the plan to annul the engagement. He liked Suanon and only recognized her as his grandson's future wife. Taking advantage of old man Mu's absence from Peace City, Mu's father and the others had pressed Suanon urgently for the jade pendant. "Suanon!" Hearing her words, several people gritted their teeth and shouted her name angrily. Suanon couldn't sit there any longer. She stood up, smiling calmly. "Take your time. I'll be leaving now," she said. As she turned to leave, Mu Jinyu stood up and grabbed her hand. "Anan, what you're doing isn't good for anyone," he said. "I love Su Zihan." Mu Jinyu assumed Suanon was unwilling to give up the jade pendant because she was still in love with him. His gaze softened as he indulged in his delusion. Suanon smiled slyly at him. Big brother Jinyu, are you sure you love Su Zihan? Don't rush to conclusions. There's plenty of time ahead. Who knows? You might fall in love with me instead, she said teasingly, giving him a bewitching smile as her fingers lightly brushed against his hand. When Mu Jinyu had first been with her, Suanan was just 20 years old. At the time, she had been a plain, unpolished young woman, like an ugly duckling compared to Su Zihan. But now, Suanan's beauty and confidence eclipsed Su Zihan in every way. Brother Jinyu, I'll be leaving now, she said sweetly. As she turned away, her smile vanished like a magic trick. The tension in her body snapped like a taut string breaking. Slowly, she walked toward the hotel door, gripping the banister of the stairs for support. When she stepped outside, the weather was fine, giving no hint of the sudden downpour that would soon follow. Suanan hadn't brought an umbrella since she had taken a taxi to the hotel. She looked at the heavy rain and hesitated, not wanting to linger at the hotel entrance and risk running into Mu Jinyu, Su Zihan, or the others. She was exhausted and no longer wanted to deal with them. She didn't care about the annulment of the engagement itself. What hurt her was the Mu family's attitude and Mu Jinyu's betrayal. She ran toward a nearby bus stop and stood under its small shelter to avoid the rain, waiting for a taxi. When one is unlucky, it seems that even small mercies are denied. No taxis came her way, and when one finally arrived, someone else took it before she could. The rain showed no signs of letting up. Suanan, already drenched from earlier, wrapped her arms around herself in an attempt to find some warmth. Damn it, why isn't there a single car? She muttered, frustrated and shivering. Chapter 23. Suanan waited, unsure when a car would arrive to take her back. Yes, she wanted to go back to Gumocheng. Compared to the Su family, she preferred to find a quiet corner where no one could bother her, with Gumocheng. If she returned to the Su family, she didn't know what kind of torment awaited her. She didn't want to lock herself in her sister's room, enduring more discomfort. Su Zihan was furious, her anger boiling over. If her mother hadn't held her back, she would have slapped Suanan fiercely. Suanan, this shameless woman. After being with Gumocheng, she still dared to try to snatch Mu Jinyu away from her. Su Zihan fumed internally, her thoughts racing. Why doesn't she take a mirror and look at herself? Yet, even as she thought this, Suanan's smiling face loomed in her mind, unsettling her further. Dressed in a striking red gown, Suanan exuded youth and vitality. Her flawless makeup made it hard for anyone to look away. Su Zihan even caught herself resenting Mu Jinyu for staring at Suanan for far too long. She couldn't let Suanan win. On the way back, in the warmth of the car, Jianmei scolded Su Zihan for her impulsive behavior. Zihan, when will you learn to control your temper? If Jianmei hadn't intervened and held her back, Su Zihan would have slapped Suanan and created an even bigger scene. Although, deep down, Jianmei also wanted to teach Suanan a lesson. Suanan, that little slut stole brother Jinyu from me, Su Zihan vented angrily. Zihan, you need to control your emotions and act according to the situation, Jianmei advised. In front of the Mu family, Su Zihan had to appear gentle and understanding, not like an entitled and irritable young lady. It was Suanan. She looked like a homeless kitten, soaked and vulnerable. When she raised her head, her red, tear-filled eyes met Gumocheng's gaze under the dim streetlights. This was his little wife. She wanted to cry, but no tears fell. Her reddened eyes spoke of pain and resilience. Mom, I was wrong, Su Zihan admitted grudgingly. But don't you see how infuriating Suanan was today? Jianmei nodded slightly. Suanan had been clever, deliberately provoking Su Zihan in front of the Mu family to make her lose control. Zihan, there's no need to rush. Dealing with her takes time, Jianmei said calmly. Hearing this, Su Zihan's eyes lit up. Mom, have you thought of a way to deal with Suanan? Let's tell Dad about tonight. He'll definitely punish her. Jianmei shook her head. Telling your father will only result in a beating. That will hurt her physically, but the pain won't last. Sometimes, teaching someone a lesson is more effective when it leaves a lasting mark on their heart, Jianmei added cryptically. What heavy rain, Jianmei said with a smile, gazing out the window. If the windows are left open in this weather, someone might catch a cold. Su Zihan didn't fully understand her mother's words, but seeing the cold smile on Jianmei's lips, she knew trouble was brewing for Suanan. Mother, please make sure we teach that wretched Suanan a lesson, Su Zihan pleaded. Meanwhile, Gumocheng was in the backseat of his car, smoking a cigarette. His assistant glanced at his watch and then turned to him. Sir, it's raining heavily. Do you think we'll make it to the airport on time? There had been an urgent matter in Jingcheng, and Gumocheng had decided to head there immediately. He hadn't expected the rain to worsen. Let's do our best to get there quickly, Gumocheng said, exhaling a puff of smoke. The assistant nodded. At the next traffic light, the car stopped. Gumocheng, having put out his cigarette, stared out the window. The rain blurred the scenery outside, but something caught his attention. A familiar figure crouched near the bus stop. Chapter 24. In Gumocheng's mind, the image of Suanan being quiet and obedient with her head lowered surfaced. The two of them rarely spoke, and most of their conversations happened in bed. She was so compliant that, at times, he found himself forgetting about her entirely. Deep down, Gumocheng was a traditional man. He hadn't been satisfied with old man Gu's arrangement for his marriage, so when Su Hua sent his daughter to his room, his initial intention was to refuse outright. However, that night, after drinking and seeing Suanon, he had accidentally slept with her. Since that moment, she became his wife. It was only a matter of time before they formalized it with a certificate. "Help me find someone," Gumo Cheng said as the car started moving. The assistant turned and looked at him. "Sir, who do you want to find?" Gumo Cheng didn't answer immediately. He finished the cigarette in his hand and lit another one. A heavy smoker, he had never considered quitting. He wanted to investigate her. His little wife. Suanon looked up at the still pouring rain with reddened eyes. She had been waiting for over an hour, yet there was no sign of it letting up. The phone in her bag kept ringing, but she ignored it, suspecting it was Suhua calling. If she answered, Suhua would undoubtedly berate her over the phone, accusing her of being unreasonable and claiming that she had threatened her elder sister. She didn't want to hear it. After a while, a car pulled up to the side of the road. Suanon didn't lift her head and continued to stare blankly at her drenched shoes. "Madam." A familiar voice broke through her thoughts. She saw a pair of polished leather shoes in her line of sight. Looking up, she saw Uncle Chen, the butler, standing before her with an umbrella. "Sir asked me to come and take you home," Uncle Chen said with a smile. "Sir?" Suanon shivered slightly, quickly wiping the tears from her eyes. She lowered her head and followed the butler to the car. However, once inside, she realized Gumo Cheng wasn't there. Noticing her searching gaze, Uncle Chen explained, "Sir had to leave for Jingcheng on short notice." The heater in the car was turned up, making it warm and comfortable. Uncle Chen had also prepared a towel and placed it beside the seat. "Madam, have some ginger tea to ward off the cold," Uncle Chen offered, handing her a warm cup. Suanon accepted it, the heat from the cup spreading warmth to her cold hands. "When Sir saw you in the rain, he called me immediately. He would have come to pick you up himself if he weren't rushing to the airport," Uncle Chen continued. "Don't hold it against him." Listening to Uncle Chen's words, Suanon didn't feel the slightest bit of resentment. Instead, her heart was filled with warmth. The fact that Gumo Cheng had noticed her and taken the time to send someone to pick her up was already enough. If it had been Suhua, he wouldn't have cared. He might have scolded her or left her to suffer in the rain. One was supposed to be her closest family, while the other was a man she had only been with a few times. Yet in comparison, Gumo Cheng treated her far better. "Sir also mentioned that he'd like you to call him," Uncle Chen added. Suanon nodded, opened her handbag, and took out her phone. She saw several missed calls. As she had guessed, the first was from Suhua, followed by one from her friend Fu Xin, and the last from Gumo Cheng. She returned Gumo Cheng's call. "Uncle Chen came to pick me up," Suanon said when the call connected. "Good," Gumo Cheng replied. "Thank you," Suanon said sincerely this time without pretense. "Wait for me to return. I'll accompany you to the Su family then," Gumo Cheng said. Suanon blinked in surprise. For a moment she forgot to respond, but then remembered to ask about his return. "Jingcheng's matter is urgent. I might not be back by Sunday," Gumo Cheng explained. He didn't care much about whether he visited the Su family or not. What mattered to him was ensuring Suhua didn't hurt her sister and didn't impose his will on her. "All right," Suanon replied softly. Chapter 25. After that, Gumo Cheng didn't say much more to Suanon. Through the phone, she heard voices on the other end discussing their approach to the security check. "I'm entering the security check. I'll turn off my phone now," Gumo Cheng said. "Yes," Suanon replied softly. "Good girl," he added in a warm tone. "Wait for me to come back." The call ended abruptly. Suanon listened to the beeping sound for a moment before placing her phone back into her bag. The ginger tea in her hands was still warm. Taking a sip, she felt a gentle warmth spread through her heart. As the ginger tea warmed her body, the chill she'd been feeling dissipated. Looking out at the rain, which had now stopped, a small smile appeared on her lips. Back at the Gu household, Suanon took a hot bath. The warmth of the ginger tea and the comfort of the blanket helped her sleep soundly. By morning, she felt refreshed and comfortable. That morning, Suhua called her several more times, but Suanon didn't answer. Instead, she called Fu Xin. "Anan, how was last night? Did you make Suzihan so angry her face turned green?" Fu Xin asked cheerfully. As her closest friend, Fu Xin knew everything about Suanon's situation. She had never liked Mu Jinyu, finding him insincere and hypocritical. Previously, Suanon hadn't believed Fu Xin's words. She had always defended Mu Jinyu, insisting he was a gentleman who would treat her well. Now, after everything that had happened, Suanon had to face the truth. Despite his outward gentleness, Mu Jinyu had betrayed her by sleeping with Suzihan. "He almost hit me on the spot," Suanon replied, her tone calm but sharp. "Ha ha!" Fu Xin laughed, fully confident in Suanon's ability to provoke others. "If not for Surochu holding him back, I'm sure you would have gotten the better of him." Suanon thought about how things had played out and couldn't help but feel frustrated. "Anan, I have to give you a like for that," Fu Xin continued, still laughing. "I'm sorry I couldn't join you last night to deal with those trashy people. My brother caught me on my way out and dragged me home to study." Fu Xin's frustration was evident. She often accompanied Suanon, but while Suanon excelled academically, Fu Xin struggled and was constantly forced to study by her older brother. Suanon didn't respond right away. Deep down, she envied Fu Xin for having a caring brother, even if he wasn't her biological sibling. In a few months, the two of them would start at a new university. Suanon wasn't in the mood for a long conversation that day. After exchanging a few words, she ended the call. She spent the rest of the day at the Gu household, avoiding Suhwa's calls and steering clear of the Su family altogether. By nightfall, a growing uneasiness settled in her heart. She thought she was used to the Su family's schemes, but she hadn't expected them to involve her elder sister again, this time without any regard for her sister's well-being. At around 8 p.m., Suanon's phone rang. It was a call from the Su family, but the voice on the other end wasn't one she expected. It was the family's old servant, Hima. "Third miss?" Hima's voice was filled with urgency. Hima had been a loyal servant of the Su family since Suanon's mother was alive. She had cared for both Suanon and her elder sister. Hearing her anxious tone, Suanon felt her heart tighten. "Come back quickly. Something's happened to the eldest miss," Hima exclaimed. The sleepiness that had lingered vanished in an instant. Without asking for details, Suanon grabbed some clothes and rushed out of the Gu household. 2 days ago, she had slapped Su Zihan, and last night, she had refused to return a jade pendant. The string of events had undoubtedly enraged Su Zihan, and now Suanon suspected that Suhwa would soon turn his fury on her.